when her girlfriend turned out to be terrible. The truth surprised everyone. Set against the backdrop of picturesque Granada, Spain, this story centers around Marina Diaz, a young and lively local, and Jasmine, whose influence leads to unforeseen darkness. Today, we explore the unsettling events surrounding Marina's mysterious disappearance, the intense investigation that followed, and the courtroom drama that revealed deep-seated manipulation and betrayal. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay updated with upcoming stories, uncovering the truths that lie in the darkest corners of human experiences. Marina Diaz, a 22-year-old from Granada, disappeared mysteriously during a festive celebration, plunging her family and friends into a state of shock and dismay. The last sighting of Marina was of her elegantly dressed in an evening gown, exiting a lively building where people clinked champagne glasses in celebration. As the night unfolded, she seemed to dissolve into the shadows, leaving behind only a trail of fragmented and contradictory clues regarding her whereabouts. In the hours that followed, the situation grew increasingly grim, raising numerous questions but yielding few answers. What had truly occurred that night? The scant evidence and peculiar witness statements only compounded the enigma surrounding her disappearance. This prompted a troubling question. Was Marina merely a victim of bad timing, or was there a more ominous reason behind her sudden vanishing? Born on December 24, 2002, Marina Diaz Vasilis was raised in the historic city of Granada in Andalusia, the southern part of Spain. She was the second youngest among 5 siblings. Marina's family life was humble yet supportive. She lived with her mother, Maria Teresa, and her 4 sisters in a modest home. The identity of Marina's father was shrouded in mystery, with no details about him available to the public. Despite their financial constraints, the family maintained a close-knit and supportive atmosphere. Marina was quite active on social media, where she often showcased her vibrant and adventurous spirit. Her posts frequently depicted her engaging with friends, attending vibrant parties, exploring nature, and enjoying live music events. These glimpses into her life painted a picture of a young woman with a zest for life and an eagerness to embrace new experiences. Details about Marina's employment were somewhat vague. She started working at a local pharmacy at the age of 17. There were rumors that she might have secured the job through a connection with the pharmacy owners, although this was never confirmed. Marina's career aspirations beyond this job remained uncertain, and it was unclear if she had any plans to pursue higher education to advance her professional life. Significant changes in Marina's life began to surface around the time she turned 16. These changes marked a period of transition towards greater independence and self-discovery, setting the stage for the perplexing circumstances that would later envelop her disappearance. Marina's life took a new turn when she met Jasmine, a woman considerably older than her, born in the late 1980s. The specifics of how Marina and Jasmine first encountered each other are not clear, but this relationship quickly became a source of concern for Marina's family. Her mother, Maria Teresa, expressed disapproval from the start, fearing the impact Jasmine might have on her daughter. The family viewed Jasmine as a negative influence, potentially steering Marina towards perilous paths. Maria Teresa often described Marina as kind-hearted and impressionable, traits that made her vulnerable to manipulation. Jasmine's presence became prominent in Marina's life, bringing about significant and worrying changes. The family perceived Jasmine's influence as transformative, fearing it was altering Marina's trajectory in deeply troubling ways. Concerns escalated as Marina seemed to come under Jasmine's sway, prompting fears she was being led down a path not of her choosing. Marina's mother and other relatives saw Jasmine's authoritative and experienced demeanor as a form of control, manipulating Marina's decisions and future prospects. Marina's earlier years, characterized by her lively ambition and potential for significant achievements, now contrasted starkly with the incomplete narrative of her teenage experiences. Her family remembered her as a spirited and aspiring young woman whose childhood environment was nurturing, surrounded by love and support. Her social circle was extensive. Marina was popular among her peers for her openness and willingness to assist others. However, her relationship with Jasmine marked a shift in her life, introducing a series of unanswered questions about her changing behavior and the new direction her life was taking. In 2019, Marina's connection with Jasmine initially seemed harmless, a mere part of her maturing process. But as time passed, the implications of their relationship grew more concerning. Marina started to isolate herself, withdrawing from family events and becoming increasingly secretive about her personal affairs. Her mother, Maria Teresa, quickly picked up on her daughter's growing detachment, signaling a deepening influence of Jasmine over her life. Marina, who had previously been transparent with her family, suddenly became secretive and irritable, especially when questioned about her relationship with Jasmine. This change alarmed Maria Teresa, who suspected that Jasmine was a detrimental influence on her daughter. Attempts to discuss these concerns with Marina typically ended in silence or frustration, exacerbating the worry within the family. Over time, the situation deteriorated further, showing no signs of improvement. Relatives noted that Jasmine began to exert more control over Marina's daily activities, closely monitoring her interactions and movements. The relationship bore alarming signs of manipulation and abuse, starting with emotional coercion. Marina found herself having to justify her actions constantly, feeling as though her personal boundaries were being obliterated. Marina attempted to confide in her mother about the manipulation, but her conversations were hushed and tinged with fear that Jasmine would discover she was sharing their secrets. As Jasmine's hold over Marina intensified, instances of physical abuse also emerged. A particularly harrowing event involved Jasmine striking Marina and cutting her hair off in a violent outburst, an act recounted by Maria Teresa as a distressing demonstration of Jasmine's control. This episode symbolized the extreme level of control Jasmine had over Marina, leading to an almost total cessation of communication between Marina and her family. Jasmine actively obstructed any attempts by her mother and sisters to reach out or meet with her, ensuring they remained isolated from each other. Despite Maria Teresa's persistent efforts to involve the police, she felt that law enforcement was dismissive of her concerns, treating them as insufficient to warrant a thorough investigation. The year 2021 marked a significant and troubling development. Jasmine decided to completely isolate Marina by moving to an undisclosed location, severing all remaining connections with Marina's family. Despite exhaustive efforts by her sisters and mother to locate her, all leads proved fruitless. Marina, once open about her fears and reliant on her family's support, was now unreachable, trapped by Jasmine's threats of dire consequences should she attempt to escape or seek help. Shumar, Marina's cousin, revealed that Marina would occasionally contact her family in a state of distress, pleading with them to avoid actions that could provoke Jasmine. Marina lived in constant fear that any small mistake could lead to dire consequences. Jasmine's influence extended beyond Marina, instilling a pervasive sense of fear and desperation among her family members as well. Marina's loved ones noted a profound change in her demeanor. She appeared defeated, having seemingly lost all hope of escaping her dire situation. What had begun as a seemingly normal romantic involvement had morphed into a suffocating trap. She became isolated from her usual routines, with her friends losing contact and her absence noted in places she used to frequent and be a recognized figure. Despite the overwhelming sense of helplessness, Maria Teresa, Marina's mother, remained determined to help her daughter. She reached out to friends and acquaintances, hoping to find any information that might lead her to Marina. Yet all these attempts were met with dead ends, leaving her feeling increasingly powerless. Maria Teresa described a feeling of utter helplessness, clueless about her daughter's whereabouts. Marina's life, once brimming with promise, had taken a tragic turn due to her involvement with Jasmine. She found herself stripped of her autonomy, unable to make any decisions for herself. The pressure and isolation exerted by Jasmine rendered Marina completely dependent, cutting her off from her supportive network. Despite numerous efforts to intervene and provide support, her family's attempts were futile. By 2021, they had completely lost any means to maintain contact with Marina. Jasmine meticulously isolated Marina, taking extensive measures to obscure their living situation. Maria Teresa was left in the dark, uncertain whether her daughter was in a house, an apartment, or even which part of the city they might be in. Every lead pursued by the family led nowhere, with the information gathered from various sources proving inconsistent and confusing. Marina's family found themselves grappling with a desperate situation. Jasmine, in a desperate bid for assistance, approached Antonio to help dispose of the body. Antonio, shocked and unsure how to react, struggled to comprehend the gravity of the request. Upon his later arrest, Antonio insisted that Jasmine had sought him out for emotional support, vehemently denying any involvement in the crime. He claimed to have been grappling with the shock and uncertainty of the situation, unsure of the appropriate course of action. Investigators, however, harbored doubts about the extent of Antonio's involvement. They suspected his role might have been more significant than merely providing emotional support to Jasmine. The details unearthed during the investigation hinted at Antonio possibly playing a part in covering up the crime, challenging his claims of passive involvement. Authorities theorized that Antonio could have assisted in cleaning the crime scene or even in disposing of Marina's body. Despite these serious allegations, Antonio maintained his innocence, asserting that he was too shocked to fully understand what was happening and denied any active participation in the crime. The rapid unraveling of events on that day added layers of complexity and drama to the case. Jasmine's confession on April 13, 2021, marked a critical turning point in the investigation. While she claimed to have acted in self-defense, the evidence that surfaced suggested her actions were premeditated and carried out with chilling precision. Investigators noted Jasmine's composed demeanor post-crime, contradicting her claims of a panicked self-defense scenario. She had meticulously cleaned the crime scene. This crucial meeting significantly propelled the investigation forward. When police searched the home where Marina Diaz and Jasmine had been living, they encountered telling signs of a crime. As they entered, a strong scent of cleaning agents filled the air, indicating a rigorous attempt to remove any evidence of the incident. In one of the rooms, police found a grim scene. Marina's body, wrapped in a blanket, was carefully concealed. An initial assessment revealed multiple stab wounds, prompting the involvement of forensic specialists. By April 14, 2021, a team from the National Police in Madrid arrived in Granada to conduct a detailed forensic analysis. Their examination uncovered blood traces that helped map out a likely struggle, aiding in piecing together the sequence of events. Minute yet crucial details emerged supporting the hypothesis of a violent altercation. This evidence was instrumental in establishing a more precise timeline for the day's events. Forensic experts discovered bloodstains that traced the movements of both Marina and her assailant throughout the house. They also noted drag marks on the floor extending from the room where Marina's body was found to the kitchen and down the hallway, suggesting her body had been moved post-mortem. On April 18th, 4 days after Jasmine's confession, Montreal's First Instance Court No. 3 ordered her detention without bail pending trial. This decision was later upheld by the Andalusian Supreme Court, which reasoned that such a measure was crucial to safeguard the integrity of the ongoing investigation and to prevent any potential tampering with witnesses or further destruction of evidence. Despite Jasmine having no previous criminal record, the nature of the crime compelled the court to detain her. Meanwhile, Marina's body was sent to the local forensic institute for a comprehensive autopsy. The examination confirmed death by 24 stab wounds with over 20 additional injuries indicative of the severe violence she endured. The findings from the forensic examination were crucial in shaping the direction of the investigation. On the same day these results were discussed, the court also deliberated on the case of Antonio Manuel, a friend of Jasmine's implicated in potentially aiding her cover-up efforts. Although Antonio was released from custody, he faced several restrictions, including mandatory weekly check-ins with authorities every Tuesday and the confiscation of his passport to prevent him from leaving the country. While he was not immediately arrested due to a lack of direct evidence from either side, he remained under close watch. Concurrently, authorities in Granada declared the incident a case of domestic aggression, given the relationship and cohabitation of Marina and Jasmine. This classification drew criticism from some quarters where it was argued that the nature of the crime was too complex to be merely labeled as domestic. However, officials maintained that this categorization was necessary within the legal framework to facilitate a thorough and effective investigation. The complexity of the case was heightened by the requirement to sift through all testimonies, including those from Antonio Manuel. Despite his assertions of innocence, investigators kept open the possibility that he might have played a role in obscuring the crime. The court meticulously reviewed all potential narratives to determine Antonio's actual involvement in the events following the crime. To ensure Antonio's compliance and monitor his whereabouts, the court imposed strict conditions such as the weekly check-ins. These measures were essential to keeping him within the reach of the judicial system and preventing any interference with the ongoing investigation. The trial, however, did not commence until December 13, 2022, nearly 2 years after the tragic events. This prolonged period before reaching court exacerbated the emotional strain on Marina's family and friends, who were eager for closure and justice. When Jasmine finally appeared in court, She was met with vocal protests and vehement demands for justice from Marina's relatives and friends. They expressed profound grief and anger over the loss of Marina, a young woman who had her entire future ahead of her. The trial itself was extensive and brought additional information to light, slowly unraveling the complex details of the crime and the relationships involved. Each session revealed more about the tragic sequence of events that culminated in Marina's untimely death. The heinous nature of the crime was solidified by forensic evidence presented during the trial. Experts from the local forensic institute outlined the multiple injuries inflicted upon Marina, which played a critical role in building the case against Jasmine. These findings were essential in reconstructing the sequence of Jasmine's criminal actions. A key moment in the trial was the testimony from a psychologist who had counseled both Marina and her mother, Maria Teresa. The psychologist testified that Marina had repeatedly expressed her fear of Jasmine, describing instances of Jasmine's aggressive and controlling behavior. It was revealed that Marina felt completely trapped, believing she could not leave Jasmine without facing severe repercussions. This testimony painted a grim picture of the psychological torment Marina endured. Maria Teresa had persistently sought to aid her daughter, even consulting professionals for help, but all attempts proved fruitless in breaking Jasmine's grip on Marina. In court, Marina's family attorney, Jesus Huertas, highlighted the severity of Marina's injuries and Jasmine's efforts to isolate her from her loved ones, which made Marina increasingly vulnerable to further abuse. Huertas advocated for Jasmine to receive a life sentence, arguing that the brutal nature of the crime warranted the most severe punishment available. Conversely, Jasmine's defense painted a picture of a woman struggling with mental and physical health issues, claiming she was under the influence of antidepressants and illicit substances, which clouded her judgment and response capabilities at the time of the incident. The defense contended that Jasmine's actions were in response to a perceived threat from Marina, who they claimed had brandished a knife. They pleaded for leniency, suggesting Jasmine's impaired state influenced her reaction during their confrontation. However, the prosecution challenged this narrative by bringing forth testimony from the psychologist and family members, asserting that Marina's murder was not only intentional but also premeditated. The prosecution emphasized Jasmine's manipulative actions in systematically cutting Marina off from any support network, showcasing a pattern of controlling and isolating behavior. They sought a 17-year prison sentence, arguing that Jasmine consciously prolonged Marina's suffering and ultimately orchestrated her death. In early March 2023, after the detailed presentations from both sides, the temporary court in Granada delivered its verdict, concluding a deeply emotional and legally complex trial. Jasmine was convicted of a crime with aggravated circumstances related to their domestic relationship and sentenced to 17 years in prison. The court acknowledged Jasmine's voluntary confession as a mitigating factor, but decided that she would be subject to monitoring by authorities for 5 years following her release. Additionally, Jasmine was mandated to pay significant financial compensation to Marina's family, totaling 75,000 euros to her mother, Maria Teresa, and 22,000 euros to each of her 4 sisters. Moreover, she was barred from contacting them for 2 years after her release. During the initial hearing, Jasmine expressed remorse for her actions and acknowledged their severity. She explained that her decision to turn herself in was driven by the belief that Marina deserved a dignified burial, not an unmarked grave, and a willingness to take responsibility for her actions. Despite insisting that she had acted in self-defense and had not intended to cause harm, her claims stood in stark contrast to the testimonies provided by Marina's family and her previous statements. Antonio Manuel, Jasmine's friend, was initially facing up to 15 months in prison for his involvement in concealing the crime. However, the charges against him were ultimately dismissed by the court, which cited his cognitive disability and concluded that he had not fully understood the gravity of his actions. This decision was met with dismay from Marina's family, who felt that the potential sentence had been too lenient considering his participation in the crime. Marina's family publicly expressed their discontent with the judicial outcome, particularly with the decision to drop charges against Antonio. They voiced their intention to appeal, arguing that the leniency shown towards Antonio did not adequately reflect the seriousness of his involvement in the crime. On the day Antonio's release was confirmed, Marina's family released a public statement conveying their frustration with the Spanish judicial system. They criticized the system for its inadequate support and argued that the case had not been taken seriously enough as an instance of domestic aggression. The family contended that the case should have been treated under legal terms that more accurately reflected the severity of the situation, highlighting a disconnect between the judicial outcomes and the gravity of the crime committed against Marina. This ongoing dissatisfaction underscored a broader concern about the handling of cases involving domestic violence and the perceived shortcomings of legal protections for victims. Marina's family argued that the failure to recognize the crime as an act of domestic abuse was unacceptable and warned that it could have adverse effects on future victims in similar situations. In response to the appeal submitted by both parties, with Jasmine's defense team seeking a reduced sentence or a complete overturn of the conviction, and Marina's family advocating for a harsher penalty, the Andalusian Supreme Court reviewed the case in July 2023. The court decided to uphold the original 17-year sentence, referencing the comprehensive evidence laid out during the trial. It concluded that the punishment appropriately matched the severity of Jasmine's crimes. Following the decision, Maria Teresa, Marina's mother, shared the profound difficulties her family faced in the wake of Marina's death. She recounted how her repeated warnings about Jasmine's aggressive behavior were largely ignored by the authorities, who failed to take protective action for her daughter. Maria Teresa detailed the powerlessness her family. The story of Marina Diaz is a clear warning about the dangers that can hide in personal relationships and the terrible impact of control and fear. It shows how important it is to spot signs of abuse and to act quickly to stop it. Marina's sad end shows why we need strong systems to protect people and make sure help is given quickly when it's needed. Thanks for joining us for this story. Don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned for more stories like this. If this video made you think, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us share more stories and keep you informed. Stay sharp and informed, and we'll see you next time for more stories.